Today, I would like to start this video with a question. In your work with kids with autism, do you understand the reasons for most of their behaviors? In today's video, I'm going to share the 5 main reasons that kids with autism get frustrated or emotional or upset or angry. And this is based on much of my research as an occupational therapist and my work as an occupational therapist as well. My name is Dr. Lisa Marnell. I'm an occupational therapist with about 20 years of experience, and I teach on the faculty at Boston University. Now, before we get started talking about the reasons for behaviors in autism, I would like you to take a moment and write in the comments, what are the behaviors that your children are struggling with? Also, I want to ask you to stick around until the end because I'm really excited to tell you about a masterclass that I am developing. All right, so what I'm going to share with you today is a roadmap that explains what may be behind the behaviors in autism. When we understand why a behavior is happening, we can look deeper and we can address the reason for the behavior instead of just addressing the behavior itself. This is a roadmap for behaviors in autism. It's a way for us to look deeper to understand and to support kids. As you can see, there are 5 suggested reasons for behaviors in autism: anxiety, motor planning, sensory, social skills, and executive function. Let's look at the first one, anxiety. By the time children with autism reach the teen years, 40% of them have a formal diagnosis of anxiety. This anxiety can come from many different sources, and it can present as behaviors such as fight or flight, or aggression and fear, shutdown, withdrawal, or meltdowns. So the next question again is, how can we address this anxiety? So I'm going to share a few quick strategies. So one of the strategies is to try to eliminate an anxiety completely. An example would be when a child is anxious to go to the cafeteria. This could be because of the sensory input at the cafeteria, such as the smell or the sounds of others. So in that case, you would want to eliminate the anxiety. Is there a quiet room that has supervision where a child could have lunch instead? And provide the child with coping strategies. So let's think of another example. If a girl is in a classroom and there's construction noise, perhaps outside on the street, and it's overwhelming to her, one coping strategy perhaps would be to allow her to and encourage her to wear noise-canceling headphones. Perhaps another strategy would be to provide her with a social story. Another strategy to help with anxiety would be to provide a physical outlet to kids. Finally, in order to help and support them through this reason of anxiety would be to provide mindfulness, awareness, breathing exercises. All right, moving along the roadmap, I want to talk about motor planning now. Motor planning is how a child develops a plan for a new motor action. So this requires some cognitive planning and thinking skills, and it also definitely requires some body coordination and body awareness in order to complete the skills. Now, motor planning could be fine motor skills, such as putting a paperclip on a piece of paper or putting a cap on a pen, or motor planning could be more gross motor, such as playing tag or playing musical chairs. So there can be different degrees as well of complexity in these activities. Typically, research does show that children and teens on the autism spectrum are more likely to have motor planning difficulties than typically developing kids. So motor planning challenges can cause behaviors in autism. Now, this is because if a child has difficulty completing a task, then that causes frustration. And that ultimately could lead to behaviors that could lead to aggression or frustration, and it's very understandable. We're going to talk about sensory processing. For children on the spectrum, 90 to 100% of them present with sensory processing challenges. Basically, a child can be over-responsive, which means sensitive to certain sensory input, or they could be under-responsive, which means they're less responsive to certain sensory input, or they may not even seem to notice it at times. Sensory input can fall into two different categories, the outer senses and the inner senses. So the outer senses are the usual sensations that we think of. These include sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Now, the inner senses include vestibular, which is balance and movement awareness, proprioception, which is the force modulation and the body awareness. And the third one is interoception, and that is our awareness of the body's internal state. So this is our awareness of hunger, our awareness of thirst. So a child in general may be very sensitive to certain input, which is over responsive, or less sensitive, which is under responsive. So if a child is in a classroom and it's particularly noisy, or if a child goes out to recess and perhaps gets wet because it's raining, these are types of sensory input that if they're oversensitive or over-responsive to, then they may have a reaction. And that is simply on a neurological level that everyone is put together differently. So sensory input and the way we process it can definitely contribute to behaviors. The next reason that a child with autism may present with certain behaviors could be because of social skills abilities. Now, kids with autism are different than neurotypically developing kids. That doesn't mean that the social skills within autism are better or worse than the social skills in neurotypical kids. It may mean they're simply different. So they may not understand innuendo. They may not understand idioms such as it's raining cats and dogs. So this can become very frustrating. Also, they may be more empathetic and less able to realize when they're being bullied or when they're not being treated well. So they may get frustrated because of not being able to understand social situations. All of these challenges and strengths can ultimately lead to behaviors when a child with autism is living in a neurotypical world. So if we suspect that behaviors are coming about because of difficulties in social situations, then we could address these social situations. So for example, perhaps class-wide discussions at school to talk about how people are neurologically different, how people have different ways of talking. Some people are more introverted, some people are more extroverted. Some people have a certain type of humor and some people have a different type of humor. We're all unique. And that's important for all children to know. Social stories are also wonderful tools, which I rely on a lot in my own work. And social stories could help a child with autism to understand certain social situations. Finally, in the example of a child having trouble with idiomatic expressions, once they're taught to kids with autism, then kids with autism master them and they understand what they mean. Now, executive function has been defined a lot of different ways by many different professions. It can sound very complex, and it is complex, but it can also be described in a very simple manner, and the way I choose to describe it is to say executive functions are the cognitive skills needed to navigate daily life. Attention, organization, initiating tasks, planning tasks, sequencing tasks, working memory, cognitive flexibility, and those are about, I think, 7 of maybe 10 to 12 that have been described. But executive function can be delayed in autism, given that executive function skills are so broad and they're so important. Doesn't it naturally make sense that challenges in executive function could lead to challenges in life, which could lead to challenging behaviors, or what are called challenging behaviors? If executive function skills present a reason for certain behaviors in autism, then let's think about how to address executive function skills. Let's take the example of a difficulty transitioning. So let's pretend that a child needs to transition from math work to reading work in a classroom. So offering supports, first of all, is a wonderful way to help kids to transition and to build this executive function skill. So using any types of visuals or schedules would be wonderful. Using a transitional object, such as just an object they like to hold, or perhaps a small stuffed animal that they like. Another way is to play games where there are lots of transitions involved in the games, such as playing tag when you change from one partner to the other, or playing Simon Says when one child is Simon and then another child is Simon and they all take turns. Also, board games with any kinds of turn taking will help to build those transitioning skills. So now we have looked at the 5 reasons for the behaviors behind autism. So I urge you to really consider that addressing behaviors is a very surface level approach to working with kids with autism. Addressing the underlying reasons for the behaviors is a way to help kids improve their skills, to understand themselves, and to manage life. So I asked you to stick around so I could tell you about my free masterclass. The name of my masterclass is Helping Kids Master Calm. This is a proactive guide to support and to promote emotional regulation in autistic children and teens. In order to get on the wait list for this free masterclass, I'd love you to head over to my website, kidsmasterskills.com. And what that will do is if you sign up, it will put you immediately on the wait list and you will get an email when the masterclass is ready. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribe by hitting the little subscribe button. And if you ring the bell, then you will be notified every time that I post a new video. I would love any suggestions for future videos on the topic of autism. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your time. I hope this was helpful to you, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future virtually or perhaps someday in real life.